So welcome everyone to this week's edition of Military Trailblazer Office Hours. Thank you for taking the time out of your Wednesday evening to spend it here in the spirit of community, mentorship, and learning. I'm your host, David Albright. I'm a lead solution engineer at Salesforce with Dave Nava and a military trailblazer. Each week we invite a co-host or co-host to take part in the conversation so that we can leverage their experience, expertise, and unique perspectives. The focus for tonight's session is exploring careers in Salesforce Consulting with Coastal Cloud. So if you're interested in the problem-solving way of life as a consultant and you're curious about what makes Coastal Cloud different from other partners, this is the session for you. I'd like to briefly introduce our co-host panel for tonight's session. I think we're waiting on one or two to come in, but we'll catch up with them. Thomas Applebaum, Dan Couch, Brian Ganischio, if I get that right, Matt Hauck, Brian McDonald, Andy Pelc, and Jenny Powell. First off, Thomas is a 5X Salesforce certified senior consultant at Coastal Cloud. He served 6 years in the U.S. Navy. Dave Nava says, go Navy, beat Army. I did not write that. As an electronic technician supervisor before beginning his career in tech. Dan is a senior director for marketing solutions at Coastal Cloud. He's been in the tech industry for over 16 years with marketing and services experiences at companies such as Adobe, Acumen, and PwC. Brian is a managing director for emerging technologies at Coastal Cloud. He's been with Coastal Cloud for over 9 years with previous experience as a chief operating officer and a project manager after serving in the Army. Matt is a senior director of marketing at Coastal Cloud, also a U.S. Army veteran. Matt's been with Coastal Cloud for over 4 years and has deep experience in product management, sales, and marketing. Brian is an engagement manager for the Eastern region at Coastal Cloud. After serving the Army for over 8 years, Brian moved in the operational excellence, organizational transformation, and change management, leader development, and client success. Andy is a senior project manager at Antea Group USA. He served in the Air Force for 10 years as a project manager before joining Coastal Cloud as an admin and PM and recently moved to his current role. And lastly, Jenny is a 5X Salesforce certified senior project manager at Coastal Cloud. She served in the Air Force for over 26 years as a project manager before leveraging a tech internship to make the move to Coastal Cloud. So big crowd tonight, and it's great to have all you co-hosting office hours with me. Welcome. So normally we typically invite our co-hosts to share their Salesforce stories, but instead we'll be touching on them later tonight as we move through and get into communication to ensure we have time for everyone's questions. Very quickly, for those of you new, joining for the first time, always like to briefly explain the purpose of these office hours before we open the floor to questions and discussions. These sessions are an informal get-together for gathering with military trailblazers and allies to explore non-technical Salesforce career and branding-related topics to help you achieve your professional development and career-related goals. The next hour is intended to be an opportunity for collaborative mentorship. Everyone on the call is encouraged to step up and help answer questions from your perspective, which will provide additional diversity of experience in the answers given. Please keep an eye on the chat window during tonight's session. I and others on the call share a lot of great information there, including learning, networking, and employment opportunities. If you'd like to ask a question at any point during today's sessions, please feel free to do so. If you don't feel as comfortable speaking up, you can also post your questions in chat. We'll do our best to monitor the chat window and also be looking for raised hands. And finally, tonight's session is being recorded. If you'd like to share an attribution-free comment, please let me know before speaking. We'll make sure it's edited out of the final recording. So with all that taken care of, we have a big group of co-hosts tonight. How about I floated out there about walking us through your roles, responsibilities, and activities as part of the consulting team at Coastal Cloud. We'll kind of get into that first. I'll let anyone open that up.
Yeah, I guess I can start. Hopefully my audio and video is okay. I'm coming to you from out in the middle of the desert in my RV via Starlink, so if the video looks a little wonky, sorry about that. All right, cool. Yeah, so my role at Coastal Cloud as a senior director of marketing solutions, I got my start way back with ExactTarget, which was acquired to become the marketing cloud. So primarily my role as one of the leaders within the firm is to help on business development as well as project delivery oversight and ensuring our customer success, which is something Coastal Cloud is very proud of. So I don't know if someone else from the Coastal side wants to take a shot as well.
Yeah, hi, I'm Jenny. I am a senior project manager. Unfortunately, I'm not on the road and up with Starlink like Dan is. He definitely embodies our work in the cloud, live at the beach, or live anywhere motto. I got started with Coastal Cloud through the military Salesforce experience where you could request an interview from any of the partners available, and Coastal Cloud welcomed me with open arms about a year and a half ago. I've spent the last 18 months leading projects from smaller size all the way up to $1 million projects, from pre-sales all the way to planning and analysis through the build, UAT and training, and then go live support. And so depending upon the teams or the size of the project, I lead teams anywhere from just a couple of resources all the way up to about a dozen. Mostly Sales Cloud now, as I'm in the retail and customer goods section of Coastal Cloud, but have experience across all different clouds. And I have a golden retriever who really wants to be part of this panel today. So sorry if you see a tail wagging.
And absolutely can be part of it.
Till he starts talking.
That's awesome, Jenny. I have a golden as well, and I actually thought that they got lost earlier today. I live on 11 acres up here in Vermont, and you let them outside to go do their thing, and they're out venturing off. I go to see where they are, and they're nowhere to be found. So a bit of a panic. And Dan, I'm also part of that Starlink club myself, except mine's stationary right now. But the beautiful thing about that, as Jenny said, is things like that actually help facilitate what our values and mentality are here at Coastal Cloud. It's all about being where you are and embracing your own culture and your individuality, and then bringing that to the table to drive success for the organization. So my role here at Coastal is I'm an engagement manager. So what does that mean? Well, basically my job is to manage relationships and farm within our client deals, trying to help our clients and our partners move forward with their digital transformations, with their organizational merges, any sort of digital activity that's taking place, and then help them go through the overall organizational strategy and help them to find solutions and continue to move forward. I enjoy this role because it very much is akin to my experience as a military officer, specifically in a deployment environment. You very much have to adapt and overcome and find solutions in any way you can. And as an infantry guy, knuckle dragger, we had to do that quite a bit, right? We had to be very resourceful. And as an engagement manager, you have that flexibility because your objective is to ensure that your client and your client teams are incredibly happy, satisfied with the things that are going on, and you're bringing them the solutions that they need. And to me, that's probably the most valuable aspect of what it is that I get to do, aside from interacting with my awesome colleagues here at Coastal. But being able to jump in and really drive and help, facilitate solutions and bring those solutions home for our clients and just to see the transformation that takes place. Been very fortunate to be a part of a lot of those in my time so far since leaving the military.
Awesome, thank you. Who's left? Andrew Pelc.
Oh, yep, best for last. I just want Brian to know that. No, just teasing. I miss my Coastal Cloud family, just so you guys know. But I am thriving in my new role, and right now I'm an internal senior PM, so I'm overseeing our Salesforce team, and we're just trying to do some process improvement within the company. And I'm very thankful for the opportunity I had at Coastal Cloud, just being the admin and kind of seeing how we do business, and then transitioning to a PM role and kind of getting some oversight there. And I feel like it's leading me up to some good success here at my new role, and super thankful for it. And like I said, I miss you guys, but I'm doing well, just so you all know.
Great to hear.
Andy, you got a blanket thief in the background, buddy.
I know she's gonna start attacking. That's my guard dog. Okay.
Oh, nice.
Dog.
Vicious.
Yes, she is. Yes, she is.
So we have an eclectic group here, kind of all over the spectrum on consulting and experience and the job tasks. This will be good because for our normal group here, where we have a lot of folks coming, initial entry into the ecosystem, this will give a kind of good perspective of what we're looking at up and down. So let's start off from the beginning with what kind of spaces does and consulting does Coastal Cloud really work in? Is there any particular industries or spaces that you work?
Yeah, I mean, we match from our Salesforce counterparts, right? Our industries. So we're across all industries. Some of the emerging ones that we are, we don't have as much of a concentration in. We kind of bucket into what's called emerging, but we're really thriving in Brian's Andrew's word in healthcare, manufacturing, consumer business services, right? And some of the emerging things for us as this Coastal Cloud is, RCG. Obviously, we have a very large client base, really great customers, and we're across a lot of different industries. So that allows Coastal Cloud to enjoy when some industries are up and some are down. We just stay constant. We've been up and to the right. So we can speak to any industry across the Salesforce ecosystem.
Nice. Excellent. So let me throw out maybe an unpopular topic. Obviously, IT is not as optimal as it was maybe a year ago in terms of hiring and the job market, things like that. Are you seeing an impact in the consulting business and in your firm with this going on?
I mean, I can definitely speak from the marketing cloud, and that's part of, aka marketing cloud and account engagement as well. I can speak from that side of the fence. There's still a shortage of marketing cloud folks, right? Marketing cloud is a niche inside the Salesforce ecosystem, so we're still, we're not as aggressive, right? We have to make good decisions for the firm, right? But we are still looking for experienced marketing cloud folks, as well as folks that are looking to get into the marketing cloud ecosystem, more of that analyst type role. We have opportunities to be able to do that. And as far as I don't think Mr. Ganuscio made it, but I don't know, Brian or Jenny, if you guys want to talk about kind of what you're seeing and hearing from your leadership around the other lines of resourcing.
Yeah, I would say from my side, so I'm within our communications, media, and technology vertical, and that's one that, from my perspective, there's always a demand for work within that space. The beautiful thing about being a part of the vertical that I'm within is that we're not necessarily limited to a certain cloud, right? So that gives us the chance to be incredibly flexible with regard to the types of implementation, the types of work, but more importantly, the type of skill sets that we're looking for within the vertical itself. Using myself as an example, as I mentioned, I was an infantry officer for close to 10 years. I got out and I started out in, manufacturing space with an operational excellence, and then eventually made that transition. And one of the things that's really important for folks that are out there that may be thinking about jumping into this space is what we do is sort of, veterans bring a certain thing to the table that most folks don't, right? And it's a foundation of understanding, leadership, and individuality, right? And being able to carry those things forward. And we are very much an organization that tries to embrace that and bring those things in. And in fact, that's our business model, right? Is we embrace that individuality, we embrace that ability for people to take things on and self-start and motivate and bring those things forward. And so for us, we're always on the lookout, right, for individuals who can bring those sort of attributes, regardless of their background, if they're a veteran or not, because we're always looking to improve ourselves, right? To Dan's point, we want to stay up and to the right in everything that we do.
And so let's transition. I see Matt has joined us now. We'll transition from the great north there with the cold and snow, and we'll go to Matt, who's got surfboards in the background there. Matt, if you would, just give us a quick intro of who you are and what you bring to Coastal Cloud.
Sure. So like Brian, I was a former infantry officer like a million years ago. And worked in the med device space for a very long time and got involved in the Salesforce ecosystem, and then jumped over to marketing for Coastal Cloud. So I run all our marketing alliances and some of our sales ops for Coastal Cloud. And, really from a culture and brand perspective, I can't think of a better fit for our organization than ex-military. My last company, actually, we did the same thing. And a lot of it had to do with that. I should say it related to Coastal Cloud in particular, which is our CEO says a lot like we're not infantry, a giant infantry team. We're a team of Navy SEALs, so I don't always love that because I was infantry. But what he means by that is the ability for a small team to be agile and flexible and learn new tools quickly, and both be empathetic to the customer in terms of understanding their business problems and being able to click and configure right away. I think we all appreciate coming out of the military that we had to improvise and overcome constantly, and that a strong culture of ownership thinking and teamwork and selflessness for the team. I see in the Salesforce ecosystem, and I don't mean to be any disrespect, but the golden jacket, thinking of yourself as an individual brand and really promoting yourself, I think that's taking some of the things in the wrong way. And what we should always be about is how can we serve the client and work together for the greater good. And I think a lot of the ex-military folks really, really get that. And it's something that really is in our DNA, and it's just an ideal fit. The other component of that is the company was started because people that had broken career paths or really didn't have a technical background, but had a really strong ability to consult, and they're inside them, are a great fit because you can always learn Salesforce. It's
right.
really how you could deal with somebody else and understanding their issues and being able to read that and figure out a solution quickly is that. And then the other aspect is we have a lot of smart people that can't keep a steady career, like our trailing spouses. So the whole company was started because there was a lot of women that choose to have families and things like that and had to stop their career because they couldn't travel 7 days a week, or 5 days a week or whatever. And we hired all of them and said, we've got a place for you. So that, that idea is really what was behind all of our success. So I know that was a mouthful, but I feel real passionate about it.
No, it's really good to hear. And, Dave and I kind of co-host, really Dave does most of them, but hearing the different consultant firms come in and talk about the culture is critical, right? It gives this broad group of folks here a good idea of what, the different cultures are out there. Two, I have had friends who are now in the ecosystem, military spouses or prior military, now spouses, cry on their latest PCS because they are in the ecosystem and they don't have to give up their job now. It's a huge, huge change, right?
Right.
And until you've experienced that life where the spouse has to give up their good job that took them for a while and goes and tries to get the next job and is underpaid because they know they've got them, right? They know that they're going to be departing in 3 years. They can underpay them, and so on and so on. So the ecosystem is, I think, real great for that. And you said a couple other things that resonated there with kind of that military culture. Dave Nava and I talk about, as an SE, the three things we generally look for is technical competence, right? Depth of knowledge with the customer, in our case being the DoD, right? So having that military background and being able to look at an E9 and say, I'm not going to call him sir, right? Or her. And then, the soft skills, having the people skills. And I think when we join, a lot of people join the system, they think the technical acumen is the most important, and it's really not. The depth of knowledge and the soft skills are way more important. We can teach you Salesforce, right? You can get on there and get as many badges you want. You will learn Salesforce if you've got the motivation for it. It's hard to teach good soft skills, as many of you have experienced in the military. You've all run into that one person where you're like, wow, you are never going to fit into the world. So thank you, Matt, for that intro to the culture, because I'm definitely going to get into that and how your culture works. You mentioned remote, and I think we've all seen in industry, or if you've paid attention to CNN lately, some big name CEOs are really talking about back to work. Everybody wants to kind of bring people back to the offices. I think the mayor of DC just said, bring your people back or we're going to start taxing you because the buildings are sitting empty. Right. So what do you all think of with remote? How do you see fully remote affecting your work culture or the culture of your kind of company, your Ohana, if you will?
Yeah, I mean, we started as a pretty much fully remote company in 2012. I don't want to steal the show. Go ahead, Elio.
Gila, do you have a
Sorry,
comment?
I was a remote employee prior to COVID, and I think it's going to impact it in a good way. In my view, COVID kind of let people know that you can be effective remote, and I'm getting a lot of opportunities from the field that are either hybrid or remote. That's my take on it.
The big challenge, I think, is showing the leadership that the ROI is there.
Right.
You've got to change the way you work on a day-to-day basis to hold people accountable in a different way.
Right.
And going from office to remote, there's a lot of hiccups and a lot of, if you weren't built that way, it's really difficult. And so people may not work great that way.
Yeah, and that's a really good point, Matt. I mean, for me, when I started out in manufacturing facilities, right? I mean, my first job when I got out of the Army in 2014 I was a second shift production supervisor in a back packaging location for a med device company in North Haven, Connecticut. And then I transitioned into, and so coming into a remote piece was really when I started to lead organizational transformations for a company called Viant Medical, and got to see the ability to engage in that in-person sort of dynamic, but then also have the ability to still connect with your other folks, right, to make sure that they're around. And my experience over the last few years within the Salesforce ecosystem is I feel like you actually get a lot more flexibility, right, even if you do have to make that travel or whatever the case may be. And that flexibility isn't just from an engagement perspective. I think it's also from an opportunity perspective. I mean, like I said, few years within the Salesforce ecosystem, I've been able to work on things from, voter registration system in the state of Georgia to transportation initiatives in Nevada to education initiatives in Massachusetts, right? And being able to have that remote capacity while also sort of embracing the individuality of those initiatives is a really cool thing that you don't get in that sort of in-person landscape. And Matt's right. I mean, it's really important for folks to recognize if you're considering, jumping into that remote capacity, standard work is a huge thing, right? And understanding standard work as a concept and as a way of life and really managing through that. Because again, I think I mentioned to you guys in the beginning, I live on 11 acres in Vermont, northern Vermont. I'm near Canada, right? There's nobody around me. And so I have to have that structure for my own sanity and also to be able to perform in a good way. But it's important for people to recognize that, because I think sometimes people jump into it and they think, okay, great, I can sit at home and work from, my laptop. But there's a little more nuance, right, that goes into it. But there's a whole lot of benefit in a number of ways if you can put that structure around it.
Yeah, and I will say, I embrace it because I love the freedom it gives me. It was,
right.
Coastal Cloud started out, was remote first from the beginning. So even during COVID, all of our folks same SOP for being able to keep working, right? So for us, we didn't, we actually hit the gas pedal a little bit harder for us. So we took advantage of as much as possible. But as far as like what it looks like based on when folks are saying to come back to an office, right? To Matt's point around ROI, there's also, right now it still feels like an employee's market. It may shift soon, but having that power. But then, like Brian was saying, some of the things I look at, especially when we talk to veterans and interview them, I have expectations of just the discipline, right? Knowing what they need to do to get it done. And, having the freedom to be able to manage your own work a little bit more, right, beyond just those scheduled calls. I mean, that sets table stakes when I'm talking to a veteran.
Yeah, I think that's a huge part of it, right? You have to have the discipline, right? And it's real easy to go watch some Netflix in the middle of the day. And that's fine, because some people work at crazy hours. Dave Nava and I are not known for our sleeping skills and our kind of sit around and do nothing skills. And so a lot of times, like a company like ours will be like, yeah, work when you work enough. And so you just need people like that who are kind of driven and have that kind of that work. Andrew and Jenny, I'd like to hear your comments, but I'd like to ask a question. Pearl mentioned in here, I'm interested in associate consultant BA roles and would love to know how to connect to Coastal Cloud as a non-military person. I'm a military ally. What will be the right program contact for me? And thanks for the pointers. And you can answer that, or we can put it in chat, anything you guys want to do. Anyone want to answer directly, or we can put it in chat?
Yeah, I can answer it. It's easy to apply on our website. You can upload your resume, and our team looks at it, pretty much immediately. I would say, in terms of if you're not Salesforce certified, I mean, that's a little bit of a hurdle. I would encourage you to do that first. And then, if you want to come in as a BA, I would, just articulate like your skills in that particular area. It's definitely the place where folks start, but make sure your Salesforce certification is done, and then explain your experience and give it a go.
Yeah, thank you, Matt. I'll come back around to what we're looking for from your consultancy, what you might be looking for ideal candidates. But Jenny and Andrew, any thoughts on work from home?
So when I transitioned, I, like many people, focused on only remote working situations. I spent a lot of years away from my kids, doing the, typical military, especially during COVID times. And so I have found that when focusing on that, and making that a priority, there's lots of different opportunities in the Salesforce ecosystem, but I definitely agree that you have to kind of be disciplined. I can vacuum and take meeting notes at the same time, but I don't know about Netflixing and doing that. I will say that it's also very important as you're looking at companies to apply to, you want to ask those questions about how they keep everyone engaged. For instance, at Coastal Cloud, we do have quarterly all hands calls where we, talks amongst ourselves. We try to make it down to Palm Coast or the other hubs that we have, if possible. Once a year, we get together and do in-person meetings to kind of be able to shake hands and give hugs, depending upon the type of person you are. And then, of course, there's other opportunities to have meetings and face-to-face chats. I have found that, being focused and having a conversation with someone on line is a lot easier than at the water cooler or in the snack bar, because you're able to focus on one person and no one's popping over to ask you additional questions. And just leveraging that technology to chat and ask questions or to jump on calls makes us all feel a little bit closer, regardless if he's on 11 acres in Vermont or in an RV in the mountains. We're able to connect very easily to get assistance and remain close.
And keep your camera on.
Yes.
Yeah. Oof, there's nothing worse than giving a demo to a bunch of people that don't have the camera on. Oh, yeah. So rough.
Are they listening or rolling their eyes? You never know.
Yeah. Andrew, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, for me personally, I've always been very unorthodox in the military. So I didn't care if you came in at 7 and left at 4. I never felt like holding people just for the time's sake was ever a good thing. I always said, hey, look, I'm results driven. So this is what I expect, and you're going to deliver, whether it takes you 1 hour or 20 hours, whether you got to stay here late or you cut out because you have something else to take care of. And that's how I still operate. I'm all about, okay, results. This is where we need to be. How are we going to get there? And then get there, right? And then just going back to what Dan was saying about it still being like a market for employees, even if they try pushing people back, I still think it's such a good time to be an entrepreneur that you can essentially do your own thing too. So you're like, all right, fine. I won't go back. See ya. I'm going to go do my own thing. And then you're going to have that battle. And then the other thing, I know that they're talking about like taxing because of the buildings. And I understand that piece, but how about how much we're saving? We're saving less wear and tear on the roads, on vehicles. So we're using like less fluids, gas, like all that stuff also helps the environment. And that's just my little 2 cents. I feel like remote work should be here to stay. And every single time that there's something new, there's always going to be some friction, right? And this isn't something that's going to go away. This is something 30 years from now, I wouldn't be surprised if 90% of jobs are remote. So you might as well figure it out, because this is the way we're going, and make it happen. Simple. Very simple.
Yeah, I agree. I think it is the way of the future. I will say I've done it now, I think, for about 3 years. I was still flying in my old job during COVID, so I was kind of out in the mix of COVID while everyone else is kind of shut down. I will say I will personally think, though I love remote and I really don't want to go back to in-person, there is something to be said for in-person. Dave and I on the pre-sale side for sure. The in-person meeting with the customer makes a huge difference. I think there's something for collaboration, idea sharing when we're in person. And I do believe I've lost a little bit of my social skills. Like if I go to the grocery store and it's packed full of humans, I'm like kind of mildly freaking out. And I'm actually kind of an extrovert, which is hilarious. So we went to like the movie theater or something a couple of weeks ago, and I was like, oh my God, humans everywhere. So there is something to watch out for, I think, from working at home. Like, I know if it wasn't for walking the dog, I don't think I'd walk outside, you know, because I do the Peloton with my imaginary friends, and then, you know, you just sit in front of the screen all day. So.
No, look, you know, being remote and having the option to be remote, let's say 80% of the time or 90% of the time. But last week we had, I don't know, like 60 people in the office. We had 3 team meetings. We had a healthcare industry meeting. I brought a whole marketing team in. You know, you've really got to do that, but you have to work hard at it. But then the other 80% of the time, everybody's with their family and dealing with their kids and all that stuff. So you've got to make it work and get people, you know, out of their little office and in person. And you forget the value of that until you do it, and then it reminds you, you know. And Jenny was right. You know, we do a lot of stuff to try to do that. And then we also are really trying to play strong on our geo communities. So much like other consulting firms, we verticalize and focus on certain industries, or like Dan running his marketing, you know, team, and we have a field service and CPQ revenue cloud practice. And so as we do that, though, they work on projects together and you build that bond, but then you also have to know people that live around you. So you really have to think about the company in 2 different dimensions. Like one, the work I'm on, the team I'm working with day to day. And then, gosh, we have 500 people at Coastal Cloud. Who lives in my neighborhood, you know, or who lives in Denver or DC, and get people to go to those meetings. So we have a whole internal marketing push around trying to get people in areas together that are from different teams. And do, like today we had a Jacksonville Trailblazer group. I wasn't there, but we had a lot of our team members go to the Trailblazer groups because it's another way to try to, you know, it's like its own little geo community too for the ecosystem. So you know, to meet other people. So I think it's important to have like just multiple dimensions you examine the company if you're not going to go with buildings.
Yeah, and David, you're absolutely right. I mean, from a pre-sales, right? I mean, Friday, the Exact Target / Marketing Cloud and Adobe, right? When you're doing the pre-sales thing, you know, getting in front of the client, trying to build those relationships, right? They're hard to replicate online. I think we've done an amazing job to do it, but we have ownership thinking in mind and everything we do here at Coastal Cloud. So, you know, we're not going to load the bus and send everybody to a meeting. We want to make sure that the right people are there, and we absolutely support that. But we also, you know, extend it to the remote aspect as well, so they can join us. But we still do on-site, you know, client business as required.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that'll never go away. And Matt, you hit great points like that. There's always going to be a need to have that social interaction, right? You know, how many people have done remote now and come together with your group and gone like, secretly, I never had any idea you were that tall, you know? You're just like, wow, you're like 6'8". No one's ever told me I was better looking than they thought I was, but maybe that'll happen at one point. So we're at the midpoint of the session right now. Before I forget, let's get a quick group photo for sharing on social media. This is always important for us, you know, always be branding. And we'll post this on LinkedIn and Twitter tomorrow, and we'll tag everyone in the photo. If you only have your first name on there, showing in Google Meet, and you want to be tagged, makes it much easier. Just put it in the chat and we'll pick up on it. And for everyone who wants to participate, please unmute your video and grab a screenshot. Just hold on any messages real quick while I get the shot. I'm always end up looking up at the camera when I do it, so it does not help with my natural beauty. All right, on 3, 2, and 1. And I think I got it. Perfect. Oh, I got an even better one on myself this time. Every time it's always a gem. All right, looks like that captured. Perfect. Okay. So let's go ahead and continue on with what is your ideal candidate for someone applying into Coastal Cloud? And I'll let anyone go into that. And Andrew, obviously, go ahead and answer that from your perspective as well. Obviously, you've moved on there.
Well, I would say, I think just, and it's a nice little caveat, sorry, it's been a long day. It's a nice little piggyback off of the previous discussion, right? I think part of it is, when you're having discussion with folks, because again, being remote opens you up to a broader range of individuals. The one thing that I always tell my direct reports, and really when I talk to potential candidates, is honesty, integrity, hard day's work, right? Those are the three things that are probably the most important when it comes down to it. And being able to come in and just not necessarily come in with the expectation that we're going to hand you all this stuff and you got to figure it out, but a willingness to jump in and help the team. And I'll give you an example real quick, and I'm not very good at short stories, so I'll try to be fast. A couple months ago, I hired a senior solutions architect. We were asked to, or I was working on a project, helping sort of turn it, in a direction that needed to go. There was a bit of wavering that took place. And I needed some solution architect support. And this wonderful woman that I just hired, I said, hey, listen, I know it's your first day, but I need you to jump in here and help us out. And she embraced that, knowing that we were going to put support around her to ensure that she was successful. So it's not necessarily, like I said, it's the willingness to jump in and be a part of something, as opposed to waiting for somebody to tell you what to do, right? And that kind of goes back to what Dan was saying around that ownership thinking. We're always looking for people that are not just looking for what's 5 inches in front of their face. We're looking at people that are thinking in terms of long term, right? How can what I'm doing today impact the things that need to be done tomorrow, next month, next year, whatever. So from my perspective, like I said, it's the honesty, integrity, hard day's work, that foundation. And then just really driving home the fact that, especially with that remote need, right? It's, the ability to self-start, jump in with both feet, not being afraid to make mistakes, right? Fail fast, right? All the principles that we came up with, in the military, right? Fail fast, make your adjustments, course correct, take a knee, drink water, and move on, right? Like that's the kind of stuff that you want to embrace. And so for me, when I'm speaking to candidates, that's really what I try to focus on.
Yeah, and
Sure.
I mean it's been interesting because again, right, marketing cloud products being kind of a niche and a niche, but there's a lot of cross-functional expertise that you're going to have to eventually get. But those folks that, especially what I've seen from the the veterans community, is not afraid to jump in and try to figure it out, not afraid to try it as long as they can until they start to spin and then reach out, right? More of that team. So those are types of people, like we ask a lot of functional expertise at higher levels, but we know well that the people that are coming up are able to have the opportunities to get those skills, especially across cloud, not just what I do in marketing, right? So that's kind of key, and having that aptitude and that desire to keep learning, right? And understanding the pace in which you need to do so is extremely important.
Right.
I think somebody might have had a question, but
Yeah, Gregory, you had a hand up.
No, sorry about that. That was the wrong button.
okay, no worries.
Done that. Do that about once a day. Andrew, Jenny, any other thoughts?
Yeah, I always tell people this. People hire you for your character, not your technical skills. And what I mean by that is if you have two people with the same technical skills and one of them just shows up with just more interest, more enthusiasm, more character, they're going to go with that person. Even if that other person has slightly more technical skills, you're probably still going to go with that other one because you want to work with, when you go into this environment, you want to think long term, like, okay, I'm going to work with this person for years, right? So you want to work with someone that you're going to trust, that you're going to like, essentially, because if not, you can be the best in the world, but if you two aren't connecting, I mean, the work's going to be subpar. So for me, it's always just looking at that character piece. I want someone who's not going to say, oh, that's not my job. You know, I want someone who's going to like just be able to embrace something new that's happening, and always just trying to challenge and look for things to help with process improvement. Just those little things to just always be better every day. That's what I look for, just in everyone, really. Like friendship, relationship, whatever. I just look for that in any type of person. So
yeah, carry the message to Garcia, right? That's the thing.
Good.
Matt got excited. Yes.
Matt, I missed you. I didn't get sick. I miss you, Matt.
Man, I haven't heard that one in a while. The old message.
Yeah, we used to make the guys on the front desk, doing I ran a basic training unit, and while they were sitting on what do you call that, OC desk or whatever, they'd sit there all night. So we'd had every recruit read it, and they had to sign that they read it on a sheet.
Oh yeah.
Because it was so important, to get those things. And that's a good, I'll just add my 2 cents too, is I think if you're going to get involved in consulting, it's not for everybody.
Right.
And the one thing I really, I told the owners of Coastal Cloud when I interviewed was, I want to walk around an organization where everybody is focused on the same thing. And in the military, this thing I missed the most was you didn't have like, at least in the combat arms in the field or whatever, if you asked anybody that was around wherever you were in the field what their mission was or what their commander's intent was, they always knew. It was the same thing. So everybody was doing it. And in consulting, it's about the client's success. And that's the measure of everything we do. And it's so you kind of judge everything that you're doing in that particular day or what you're doing on the team. Is it going to provide that outcome? And if we can all rally around that, then the outcomes just happen. So, but it's sometimes very difficult if you're in a comfort zone and you like to be given particular things to do and just do those things. Go work for a company, go work for somebody that's going to give you prescriptive work like that. But in consulting, you've really got to think, how am I going to improve this client, and be creative and collaborative and get that out of them. And that's not an easy ask, and that's our mission now. But that's how I interpret it anyway.
Yeah, I think from my Army days, I still view it the same way. If I have the commander's intent, I can execute in an absence of guidance, right? And that is very critical when you're consulting and you're out there on your own, you're talking to the customer and they start asking you some crazy stuff that you weren't expecting. You're like, all right, how are we going to roll with this, right? And just kind of knowing what that intent is. And Dave and I do it in our jobs where, you're kind of out there and you're on your own with the customer and you don't have time at the moment to reach back, or you're in a conference or something like that. You just kind of got to know what right should look like and kind of execute in that absence of guidance. And that is easy to say and not always easy to find, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and it's almost like the whole red hat, blue hat, right? Like, you got to sometimes put your red hat on and figure out things in terms of, okay, what needs to be done, or what sort of obstacles are going to come in front of this client, right? And you have to sort of anticipate what's going to happen on every half and have that sort of ownership mindset, but then also put your blue hat on, right? And think with regard to what you need to do in order to be successful for them, And so it's a real big back and forth sort of chess match that you got to play in a lot of ways. But, I think, going back to what we were talking about in the beginning, it's, veterans and allies of veterans and, those who are close to the veteran community are uniquely positioned for things like that in a lot of ways, right? Because flexibility and adaptability are the foundation of everything that has to be done there. And to me, that's what I've found personally as part of my transition. And I tell veterans this all the time that I'm talking to you don't realize everything that you were given as far as the gifts of leadership and training and experience from the military until you're gone from that, right? And it kind of goes back to what Matt was saying, right? Is we as veterans we look to our left and our right, and we know that we've got like-minded individuals that are going to cover us no matter what, right? And when you get out into the corporate world, that's not a guarantee. And I think that goes back to what Matt's saying with regard to the importance of really looking intrinsically and figuring out, like, hey, what are the things that really matter the most to me, and not being afraid to explore, right? But while trying to be true to yourself at the same time.
So I got two questions here, and one will kind of tie into the other one. Does Coastal Cloud partner with Hiring Our Heroes, Salesforce? We'll ask that one first, and then if someone could look at Ryan Lloyd asked, do you do much with Experience Cloud? So we're going to tackle those.
Yeah, we are. We are part of the Hire Our Heroes program, right? So we should be listed out there. I know we've had a handful of folks come through, right? And I think all of us that are veterans at Coastal Cloud kind of perk up when we see those. Make sure folks know that they can reach out, and they've got their hand. And then as far as Experience Cloud, yeah, we're wall to wall Salesforce from a Salesforce platform perspective. So yeah, we have quite a bit of Experience Cloud clients and projects that we've done.
Yeah, I figured the Experience Cloud, I think it's everywhere, right? Anytime you've got that customer facing website, it's going to be immediate Experience Cloud. I think we see it quite a bit. All right, so I'm going to transition to a PMP question, right? This is one I'm always fascinated with. Everyone here, as you kind of start to retire from the military, you get out of the military, you're like, I hear if you get that PMP, you're going to get an extra 100K from your employer tomorrow, right? We're all laughing because we all know this story, right? As soon as I get out the gate, if I've got that PMP, I'm going to be golden. So what are our thoughts as folks? You got a couple here who are prior program managers. What are your thoughts about program management, how that transferred into your civilian career now, and thoughts on PMP, and was it worth it?
First of all, I'm waiting on my 100K.
Right.
Aren't we all?
Yeah, if someone can look into that, I would appreciate it. And I will say, as I was transitioning, I did the same thing. I started looking at the PMP, but not because it was the golden ticket, but because it was a way to kind of just put a bow on the experiences that we had as active duty. And so, when you look at like the life cycle of the project, it's easy, if you're looking for it, to see how our military duties fit into that. We do a lot of projects. We just don't maybe document it the way that the PMP outlined it. So I do think that the skills are transferable. You just have to be willing to kind of understand that it might not be a one-for-one, right? Someone who is working on a project may be able to initiate and may be able to collaborate, but maybe they're not good at documenting risks, because we don't do that in the military. We run through those risks and take care of it versus standing around talking about it. And so I do think it's important for folks who are transitioning to be able to kind of, again, document their experiences. And we do that by degrees and by certifications. And that's just another way that we kind of set ourselves apart. I don't think that it's necessarily a requirement to be able to get those 100K jobs, because I'm sure there's lots of folks out there doing that. And it's not a guaranteed way to be successful. You have to be able to utilize the skills that you had in the military and be able to translate that and transition and be able to continue to do that in the civilian world, because it doesn't have that structure that a lot of us thrive in. It doesn't necessarily have, the rule set that you want to follow. And so I personally found that a little difficult, because there are too many people calling people by first names. And, in the military, we don't do that. And so once you transition and you're able to kind of remember and utilize those skills with new names, I think it's easy to be successful.
One thing that I noticed with that is the closest connection that I found to PMP or any sort of project management or certification is FM50. Right. So if you're in the Army, we had FM50, and that's all about planning and orders production. Right. And within there's what's called the military decision making process, and then you've also got fun things like troop leading procedures and all that other good stuff that's in there. And I did find that, to Jenny's point, while that didn't give me all the skill sets I needed, it was helpful with regard to that framework thinking, and really more importantly, like the backwards planning and things like that. Just wanted to add that in there as far as a connection goes for the team.
Yeah, I think I'm not really sold on the PMP, and when folks who are getting ready to get out are like, should I get PMP? I'm like, you can. If program management is what you want to do, then yeah, I would definitely get it, especially if you can get it paid for by the system, right? But I think a lot of times what we fail to recognize as vets is just putting day-to-day operations and plans into plain English and putting that on a resume and talking about it. You want to talk about program management? Deploy a unit overseas, right? I don't care if it's a company size unit or if it's a battalion or a brigade. That is a major undertaking. Or as a lot of this, the spouses will talk about, I know, how about I PCS a family across the country while my husband's deployed, right? With 2 kids, 3 kids and a dog, absolutely there's planning in there and time management and resource management, right? And so just being able to relay that, right? And what you taught in the military, you don't really talk about yourself, right? You don't talk about yourself, you're a silent professional. And so learning how to broadcast that information either on social or a resume or an interview is critical to showing that you've got those skills. So
it's also really hard though, right? Because we're all sort of wired to your point, David, to not brag on ourselves, right? And so I know for me, I had a really hard time putting together my resume because it's like, okay, how do I translate this stuff without sounding like bragging? You know what I mean? Like it's a really tough challenge, but you get through it as long as you got the right support around you, for sure.
The way how I always tell people is go into the interviews or whenever you're trying to get a job or go anywhere, and go into it as if, how would I talk about one of my troops, right? How would I bolster them? How would I highlight them? And you got to do that for yourself. And even if you didn't lead any troops, how would you talk about someone that you know is awesome, that is like your coworker, your peer, right? And that's how I have to articulate it, is like, okay, what would you say? And then now you got to do that for yourself. And I think it helps people get in that mindset, like, okay, all right, I think I can do that. At least I hope it does.
Yeah, Iris has a question, and looks like we got a question in chat as well. Iris, go ahead.
Not really a question. First of all, thank you guys so much for being here. I love these sessions where we get to hear how you guys did it, and it just brings a lot to this program and to newbies trying to get into the career. But I was thinking for projects management, I feel like service members, military spouses, we're used to those processes because we have to be able to do something and pass that on to somebody else and say, okay, you've got it now, and move on and do the next thing. So we're used to those processes. But when you're transitioning, I feel getting to understand or translate that jargon so that you can speak to it, because when you can't speak to it, those in the corporate world think that we don't know what we're talking about. They don't realize that we just get stuff done. You know what I mean? So I would definitely advise maybe taking some kind of course or a little something just to get those acronyms and those jargon into play.
And there's actually programs out there. So I know for me, for example, I spoke to some of my mentors, and they were like, you need to go into the operations community because, infantry guy, they're like, that's where you go. That's where you belong, operations. And so I found out about this program through Syracuse University, where it's a free program. You sign up for a year and you can get unlimited certifications through them as long as you can keep up with the coursework. And so there's a lot of those things out there. And all it really takes is, sitting down for an hour and a half and putting together an application and, explaining why it is that you need that and, getting on board with it. There's some really great programs for sure that can help with that at no cost.
Yeah, I think if you can put, just something as simple as taking a unit to the range, right? And the safety aspects of it and the resource management of it and getting ammunition there on time and put that in plain English, you can talk project management on there. Gregory has a question. How would you weigh PMP versus Scrum Master in terms of value in the Salesforce world as a piggyback skill attribute? Thoughts?
Jenny.
Well, I'm going to quote Dave. He says that he sees them differently, but complementary certifications. So, I think, coming into a job and having kind of background and knowledge is important, because then that just lays the foundation. But really, it's about adopting the methodology of the company that you work for and understanding their terminology, because, you know, coming from the military, there's a set of acronyms. Salesforce has its own set of acronyms, and then Coastal Cloud has their own set of acronyms. And so just kind of having an understanding of what a project is and how to move it through is great. But really, once you get into a role, you're going to have, I think, more specific guidance, because you don't want to come in with your project, you know, mindset that this is how you want to run a project, and then you get to a company and they want you to do it different or in a different order, or, you know, focus in on different ways. And so again, I think putting a bow on your experience with a certification, whether, you know, Scrum Master or PMP, is great, because everyone likes bows. It's easy to look at your resume or your LinkedIn and see that you were certified. So obviously you're knowledgeable, but the work and the transition really happens when you come into a company. And I know it's different amongst consulting companies. No matter where you go to, it's going to be a different transition. I'm sure Andy, who said he did not miss me, even though he missed Matt, that's okay, Andy. You know, he came in and transitioned to a different company and probably, you know, had a little bit of time, you know, adjusting too. So I just wanted to give Andy a hard time. He came to us as a SkillBridge intern, and so spent a lot of time talking with him. And I'm very proud that he has moved on to greater things. So I miss you, Andy.
I do. I love you and I miss you.
Yeah, I think in my opinion on PMP and Scrum Master, kind of depends where you want to go. Do you want to kind of go up into the higher levels there and do that program management and tracking your programs moving through, or stay kind of down in the trenches a little more where you're doing the Scrum Master and you're in those sprints, you know, every day working it, fighting the agile, you know? And you make a good point, Jenny. I don't have a lot of experience outside of the mothership and one other partner, but really agile is a little different at every place you go, right? We'll sit in on sometimes some of the meetings, and you watch one company's agile be very, very different than another one. You're like, wow, this is very different. And so you just got to figure out what that culture is, what that flavor is, and adjust to it.
Yeah, in my world, you know, Marketing Cloud is pure waterfall. So there's always that hybrid, right? So it's, and not being so rigid, right? That's part of our flexibility where we you know, we talk a common language when we're talking to our clients, even though behind the scenes, we're all trying to figure out what works best for all of us to get the right client success across the line, right? But just being flexible, right? That's part of it too.
And wrapping it up, we got about 1-2 minutes left. Iris brings in the heavyweight question. What weight do you put on the number of Salesforce certifications an individual has when you are interviewing?
I mean, all consulting, like certified Salesforce consulting partners, we have requirements around the number of certifications and certified people, and we our expertise levels that are shown there. Coastal Cloud has done a lot of work towards getting ours to where it needs to be, but we have, it's kind of that gateway to be able to get into Coastal Cloud, to be able to, you know, have that certification. You know, from Marketing Cloud, it's a little different, right? There's a couple of certs that we really like to see people have, and it really just depends on your experience and then, you know, your desire to get additional. So if you want to get 30 certifications, that's great, but can you do the job?
Yeah, for sure. Certs matter, especially, we've talked about it before on here. Certs have points, and points equals levels in the partnership, right? But experience is what matters, right? Can you deliver for the customer? So really, ideally, you always want the best of both worlds, but certs do have a weight for sure. So we are up the top of the hour. Before we close, I'd like to thank Thomas, Dan, Brian, Matt, Brian, Andy, and Jenny for co-hosting tonight's session. It's been awesome having you here and hearing your thoughts on things, getting your perspective on the topics we've discussed. Any last minute words?
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Yep. Thank you, and reach out if you have any questions. Any one of us, you can find us on LinkedIn.
Yep.
Thank you. Thank you all for your time. With that, thank you all so much for attending. Hope to see you next week, and have a great Wednesday night.
Take care, everybody. See ya.
Thank you.
Be safe.